This is surely one of the most controversial moments in Doctor Who history. We've always got the plane of stones. I think it looked like a nightclub. It was like a voyeurist. I mean, I think the shooty Doctor would have just got on some little elevated stone and just kind of been gyrating and thought he was in some sort of little night spot. I think the Doctor's going through. He's like in the charity shop going through the shelves. He's going through all this bric-a-brac. You know, we're going to die. Hold on a minute. I like this plastic. Hold on. Do you know they haven't dusted it yet?
What happens on the plane of stones stays on the plane of stones.
April 7th to the 12th of May 73, the Planet of the Daleks was broadcast. I was just coming up to my 5th birthday, so I was a 4-year-old watching this, and I have such vivid memories. I tell you what, oh yes, I mean this was a cornucopia of fear and scare. Mesmerized by seeing the Daleks through the jungle. That was mesmerizing. The chase sequences seemed to last for ages. The Dalek army, how big was that? It was at least 6. The Supreme Dalek, the invisible SPiridons, the heavy breathing, Joe with that kind of plague, and the arm. The whole lot, fantastic. Mind you, when you look at the plot now, you do sometimes wonder whether Dalek headquarters on SPiridon it has the same staff as border control for Britain, because I tell you what, it's porous as. So yes, it was interesting. But this, as you know, is my go-to story, my comfort blanket of Doctor Who. So you can probably guess where I'm going to go with some of the marking, but that's allowed, isn't it? It's Christmas. What I will do, if I get myself in order here, yes. So we've got Plans of the Daleks, Nation, Terry Nation, Rehash, or Genius in this story. We'll look at that. You know what we're like? We're little devils. So when you look at this, we know it's got a lot of the reworking of the Daleks' original plot. Does that affect anything? And we'll go through a lot of detail about where we saw our classic Terry Nation moments. You know for a fact, I cannot forget where we are now. So we would have, and we'll take the mick. What would Shooty's Doctor do? We will not have Sutek sleeping because it was pre-Pyramids of Mars. Week off, Sutek. You can nod off. We do have the intimacy watch, though. I'm sorry, I take this very seriously, as the BBC do. I'll be on this like a rash. We'll be asking about the cliffhangers. We've got quite a few to look at. Are they key or twee? Too easily resolved. So there's quite a lot to look at. And you know we've got all the criteria. You know, I'm criteria obsessed. Too many years doing Ofsted, being a teacher. But yes, we judge things as objectively as we can, and then we give it a rating at the end. You know that's how we do things. So with no further ado, let's get people on. So, first of all, he's having a read, so I better get him on now. Hello. How are you?
Hello. Guten Abend.
Yes, I saw one of your tweets, and it was the German version. Was it the German version?
Yes, German paperback book. There you go.
Very nice.
Who, Planet of the Daleks.
I do have some of your illustrations as well to look at later as well.
By Schneider Buch.
Well, you're very gifted, man. Very gifted.
I can speak German wonderfully well. No, I can't really.
Well, the Daleks could in that season 4 epic, couldn't they?
Yeah.
When we saw them at Nuremberg, they were amazing then.
Yeah.
Very, very good. And of course, our reviews cannot be here without Hugh. Hello, Hugh.
Good evening. Hello.
Well, Plans of the Daleks, easy peasy, wasn't it, that one?
Oh yeah, I have very strong memories of it as well. I know I'm a bit older than you, Brendan, but I think it is one of those ones which, for a variety of reasons, sticks in the mind. So.
Yeah. And to make the quartet up, so we've got at least different voices here. We're going all the way over to Canada, and we're going to go and say hello to Brian. Hello, Brian.
Hello, Brendan, Jeremy, and Hugh.
Hello.
And I was only talking to you yesterday about you were about to go and you were going to do an omnibus. You were going to watch them all together, weren't you?
And I did. And then I fell asleep halfway through episode 6. Halfway through.
Oh dear. Oh dear. So the ratings could be terrible. So
no
here we go.
on document.
Well, as you may know, people who are watching us, we start with different things, and I'm going to start with the time, Eddy, because sometimes when you watch something over again, never mind before you get into the reads of discussing and analysing what's actually the problem or the merits of each story, you start to see resonances of other ones. And I never mind the Daleks issue, which I'll come to a bit later. But I actually saw loads. I just want to see, Jeremy, is there anything that came to mind when you saw the 6 episodes and you thought they've done that in a similar way here?
Not originally, because I didn't see the first Dalek story, but obviously you can see some similarities when they're escaping from the vent, the air vent.
Yes.
And then they throw a rock down the vent, and that's similar to when they threw a computer down the lift shaft in the Daleks episode to stop the Dalek from coming up.
I know. I mean, I've got them all later in our burning issue item on the Daleks, but yeah, there's so much. Anything wider afield, Hugh, that kind of resonated?
I always thought that the SPiridons, simply because of the clothes, looked a bit like Yetis.
Yeah,
even though you don't actually know what they look like. I
thought because it was an interesting colour, I thought it was like a punk Yeti, like a Tony Wilcox Yeti.
Okay. This being, of course, my memory of it is in black and white.
Yeah. Mine too, yeah.
So I don't. I watch it now, and it's interesting in terms of something that doesn't have to be colorized and something that I experience as black and white. It's quite difficult sometimes to make the difference between something that's colorized and something that you only saw in black and white. So I just saw them as sort of like large amorphous blobs, a bit like Yetis.
Brian, any resonances or time eddies with any other Doctor Who stories? You thought, I've seen that scene done similarly.
Definitely. What was it? Ian trapped inside the Dalek and he couldn't get out, and then at the very last moment they blow it up, but he got out just in time. That happened with Rebek is her name?
Yep.
I can't remember.
Yep.
So hard to get all these thal names right. But yes, there's a lot of similarities between them. Again, the Daleks can only go down corridors. You got doors to hide, corners and doors to go around. But for me, the thing that really hit home was this was the first Target novel that I ever read.
Yeah.
So to be able to see it for the first time was really something special to me, and I was in my mid-teens. There was a children's station here in Canada that decided to show all of the Doctor Who episodes that existed from start to finish every day. And so I couldn't wait for it to get to John Pertwee. I had no idea, though, that so many episodes were missing. So it happened rather quickly. And then I was thrilled to have 4 brand new seasons of Classic Who. So it was a treat when this one came around.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, we've all got different memories, different ages and all the rest of it. So I'll do my little kind of my time Eddy little bit here, because
I've got a question. Yeah, is it called SPiridon or SPiridon?
I know.
I was
You know, I'm going to link it to something in a minute. Don't you worry. But when he drops the bomb, and he has to go and retrieve it amongst all the Daleks. You know, it reminds me of so many Doctor Who stories. But I'll just throw in Asylum of the Daleks, where they had to creep around. Not in that little room, but there was another room where there were also mad Daleks. It reminded me that the thals did look a bit like Underworld, and that whether they were slightly recycled, because it was Doctor Who and it was BBC, of course. So there was a bit of that. Every time I look at them, I'm going, oh, it's a bit underworldy, but they were there first. The Dalek head teacher, you know, the one that stands at the temple gates and says, "You are late." I can hear Arcturus in a Dalek voice on Curse of Peladon saying, "You are late," to the John Pertwee Doctor. Little other touches, the ice walls. I went a bit Dragonfire. You know, there was all that kind of similar look to it. The horror of Fan Rock, I'm going to throw that one in there, because when John Pertwee, they made a barricade before they went up via parachute or balloon upwards, he said, I don't know if I've locked the Daleks out or locked us in. And it just resonated with, you know, the great cliffhanger when Tom Baker said, I do. So there's a little bit of that. And of course, how many awakenings do we have in Doctor Who from the Deep Freeze, whether it's the Ice Warriors, the Tomb of the Cybermen, the Warriors of the Deep? You know, it's classic, classic, classic. So, you know, since we're doing a review and we're Doctor Who fans, I just thought we'll say, good old Doctor Who. It's got lots of kind of resonances with everything.
Yeah.
Now, you were saying how to pronounce it. Well,
SPiridon. No. Yes. SPiridon. Yes.
Well, because I had a spirograph, it was always a SPiridon. And no, so
I never had that toy.
We never saw their skills. Maybe they were good at this sort of stuff. So I don't know. It just did always make me think of that. But there you go. God, I'm ready for anything. We've got the usual synopsises. John Daly loved this little feature we did a few reviews back when we looked at those Radio Times synopsis there.
Aren't those pieces of artwork wonderful? You just don't get those now anymore, but they're just wonderful.
No, they just wouldn't. They just wouldn't waste the time on it, would they?
No,
you'd get a
brilliant
photograph. A photograph if you're lucky.
Yeah.
But just for a second, just look at the first one. The TARDIS lands on a strange planet with a doctor unconscious and apparently gravely ill. Jo looks for help and finds herself facing the dangers of an alien jungle. That is an absolute belter of. I mean, that is just everything I want in a Doctor Who story.
Yeah.
And
actually starting with the Doctor in peril, so the companion has to... Brilliant. I mean, you know. So,
and it illustrates, you know, quite how far the Jo Grant character had come along, that he could do that.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel strange. It didn't feel as if it was being pushed, and it didn't feel... But she'd become that over the series.
She did, and I think we will have to talk about her character arc tonight because of what happens in this one, right next to Green Death, of course. And of course, you mentioned your illustrations, Jeremy, and I just want to throw a couple of mine in. I'm sure you've got them as well, but the Daleks, the Doctor Who and the Daleks omnibus that I got in 76 or 75, whichever it was, off my aunt and uncle. Yeah, and it's so glossy, and it's got two key stories in there: Genesis of the Daleks and Planet of the Daleks. And there's a great shot from Planet of the Daleks on the right, and I'll show you two further ones. There you go. Look at that. I mean, this is. I had the Target book, as you said, Brian, but I also had this. And so I ducked and dived. And obviously, when I'm in bed as a little kid, I'd love to look at the pictures, especially the color. And this took me to so many places, Brian, imaginatively, you know?
Yeah, I know how you feel. Target covers were mine. I have a whole bunch of them still in the closet. I should have fished it out. I probably got it.
These ones are from the Daleks annual, aren't they?
Well, these are from the omnibus, but whether they've been recycled,
yeah. But the artwork's fantastic, isn't it? It's just
beautiful.
Brilliant.
And this is what we're going to talk about in the story, because of course we've got our usual criteria and everything. But it had ice canos, it had jungle, it had, I mean, to me, it fires up your imagination. But there's your book that you were showing everybody with one of the illustrations there.
I'd never know what the title meant at all.
I think they did a proper Target book cover later on, years later on, but by this company, I think. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, just about.
That's not Planet of the Daleks. That's Death to the Daleks.
Yes.
But they just used the artwork for it, so that was later on.
So yeah, I mean, like I said, this got everything. And you can see from some of the different covers whether you got the DVD early doors or the VHS and all the rest of it. So it's beautiful. But we normally start with getting things right, and of course, there's always a few bits of gossip about each story. This one was going to be called possibly Destination Daleks, recognized as a reworking of the original Dalek story. Oh, go figure. One prop owned by Terry Nation was loaned and remastered, which was obviously the Supreme Dalek, because they needed to give him a big torch.
Torchy the Dalek.
Torchy the Dalek. And I was saying to Brian earlier today, I couldn't believe, honestly, it's so vivid in my memory. I thought the Supreme Dalek was in it more.
No, not that much.
And yeah, what a shame. He lands in that kettle and then you only see him for a bit. Barry Letts was really unhappy with the model Dalek army. I mean, why? Surely they had that. Was it War of the Daleks, that board game?
Yeah.
With all them little Daleks. It just looked like them, but I had the colour version and was not happy with the interior sets for the Dalek City. Well, with a Dalek City, surely you just need walls and a door. I mean, they don't do aesthetics. Although I did find it funny, Hugh, that when John Pertwee's doctor escaped, as he always does, as the doctor always escapes from the Dalek City, when he escaped from the cell, they happened to have a hat stand or something with the prop was there. Thought, oh, gosh, the Daleks are into props now. Here we go. So, yes.
I don't think the Daleks were into decorations.
No.
Oh, I've got a surprise. I don't know if you've even seen this, but anyway, I just wanted to show you that just so everybody knows we're on the money. But the ratings, we talked about Carnival of Monsters, and that was around 9 million. And now, as this season has progressed, now I'm going to say it and then I'll shut up. It starts massively, but isn't this the curse of every Dalek story? It drops, 2.5 million. Now, it's a 6-parter as well, and I think the longer the stories go, I think that can also have an attrition effect on it. But yeah, it's a Dalek story, 11 million, bang, you've got everybody there, and it holds well for 3 episodes, and maybe it should have been a 4-parter. But anyway, if you, as we go into this, Jeremy, where would you like to start just regarding a nice memory of Planet of the Daleks?
Just the fact that the Daleks had returned. I first saw the Daleks in Day of the Daleks, and obviously they're returning in the Planet of the Daleks, so it was great for me because I quite like the Daleks, So, yeah. So that's the strong memory. So I'd be about 9 or 10 years old, and it was a pretty good season as well, season 10. So.
It was, and it's deceptive when I look back. And as you know, everybody, I go to the Facebook photo research page. I love to see how muddy it was. Disaster. Somebody's meals on somebody's bonnet there. Look at that. But it had everything, this story. It really did. Outside broadcast, lots of Dalek action, different levels of Dalek. The companion was important. Actually, it's quite a small cast. When you see the cast, Hugh, I think that helped actually over the 6 parts.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about it is that there's a definite attempt to give all of the characters a real sort of like role, and that works. And so therefore, it doesn't. You don't have someone coming on just to be killed. Generally, you have. Now, do I think all of the character development really works? No. But some of it's very good and some of it's quite interesting. And I think some of it sets it up for both the Green Death and, to an extent, Genesis of the Daleks. So there's an awful lot in it.
Yeah. I'm glad Lartep wasn't called Petal, as was rumored.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have helped. So, Brian, we're about to hit the burning issues, but one memory of when you first watched this. Why did this grab your imagination?
Well, since I'd already read the book, what got me the first time was, where is the escape from the city? Because I'd read the novel, so I know that they built their little machine, put it on the Dalek, and then they escaped up the shaft together. And when I saw that, it was all gone. They had edited the episode so that as best they could, it didn't even work 100% properly. But that was I was excited to see it, so happy to see it. I think it was black and white, possibly. I can't recall. But just seeing it with the escape scene going up the shaft, all of that was cut out and not very well. So when this was finally released on home video with the colorized version, including seeing even the black and white one beforehand, that was a real thrill for me to finally see it in its entirety, because I imagine you saw it in its entirety when it aired.
Oh yeah.
As well. And Jeremy, yes. I was like, nope, Simon's not here. Jeremy, did you see it in its entirety the first time around, or?
Yeah, I was lucky actually. I did. I wasn't invited to any children's parties at the time, so I managed to see it. There were only about a couple of episodes, one from the Time Monster and one from the Mutants, which I missed, which I wasn't happy about.
It got difficult. It gets difficult when it's Saturday, and if I was a Middlesbrough fan, if it was a home match, you might be at the match and you get late. You're late home. I've made parents over the years race everywhere to get me to a Doctor Who episode.
Me too. Yeah,
I know. Very bullying. Anyway, we do actually, Brian, to do our burning issues, which people do like to see us actually argue. We might love the episode or the story, but there's always an issue. Here we go. And one of the issues, I'm just going to get to my right position here, but one of the issues, there you go, I'll put you in highlights. One of the issues, I want to thought now, because before we get to the classic Terra Nation one, I actually want to say, isn't this one of the, he's got away with it. This is surely one of the most controversial moments in Doctor Who history. And I don't hear people say anything. You've got the third Doctor about to batter with a club Wester. Now, how come everybody refers to the first Doctor in An Unearthly Child and said, oh, surely everybody should be going to this? And I know everybody will say, oh, well, of course, he was just protecting Joe. Well, hold on a minute. There's protection and then there's assault and battery. But I'm not too sure. I mean, did you...
Yeah, I mean, I think that the whole thing about this is that one of the issues is that Terra Nation writes for a slightly different Doctor than John Pertwee is. So the character's slightly different here than the rest of the writing for Pertwee, particularly in the season, doesn't really work as consistent. That doesn't cause a huge amount of problems whenever you're 8 becoming 9 in the middle of the episodes. But yeah, I think there's it did seem a bit odd, but at the time I wasn't that bothered.
No, at 4, he's like, I always said, John Pertwee was like my granddad. He felt like he was in charge, heroic and everything. But when you look at that, Jeremy, pacifist Doctor?
No, but it doesn't bother me. I think obviously the William Hartnell first story, that was a little bit more controversial when he picked up the rock, and but I think it was kind of leading somewhere differently. I don't think the Doctor was going to kill the
and the other aspect that's different is in terms of this, he thinks that's a monster, whereas in terms of the Unearthly Child one, it's a person.
Yeah, but
Who knows?
I know what you mean. But isn't it funny that the Doctor's all about don't judge people?
Yeah.
And I mean, I could have had this in my shooty item where he would have said, "Where did you get that quote from?" I don't know. I mean, could have been very different. But Brian, don't you find this? I mean, at the time, I didn't judge it like this, of course. But I just find it funny when everyone says the third Doctor's the pacifist Doctor, the third Doctor is the one who's anti-one. There's a lot of speeches in this that we'll look at later on. But for Terry Nation to write these lines and have that action, you think it doesn't marry really. That 1 minute he's going, you shouldn't be going to war, and I don't like to use a weapon myself, and the next minute he's got hold of a club.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always one story or another with every Doctor where, even though they're portrayed as the Doctor doesn't use a gun or the Doctor abhors violence, sometimes he does. This did, I get like Jeremy, this didn't bother me at all. I think what, even when Colin Baker had put the gentleman into the vat of acid, I thought that was a twisted sense of comic relief, because I don't think he did that on purpose. I think he bumped him in with his rear end and then was like, oops, sorry about that.
Yeah.
It wasn't intentional. So I think it was more just violence as humor that maybe could have upset some people. But no, John Pertwee, he was a man of action. They were always plugging him as a man of action with his the Ncuti and Aikido, karate, they called it sometimes.
Oh, I loved it. When I used to have a dog and I used to mess on with him, I'd make all these mad sounds. And Jamie said it's like John Pertwee when he goes, wah! And he shouts. He's so decisive. Anyway, my other burning issue, which I think a lot of fans would want to talk about, is Terry Nation's plots and whether this is terrible that he's actually in this Planet of the Daleks really reworked or recycled or upcycled the Daleks plot. And also there's other Dalek stories there. I mean, just to remind you, I mean, does it bother you, and should we care, that he loves to have slave workers, oppressed people, patrols? The Daleks always have a Dalek patrol, and the Daleks always have to report. You have the fungoids, the slither. Oh, he's so imaginative with these creatures. That's a good thing. The mountain adventure, he loves a mountain adventure. He does like a lift or ventilation shaft, and he loves the word the shaft, and all Dalek units. Just like Day of the Daleks, Suicide Rogue Bombers. Now, I know that was a different writer, but, there's a similar vibe going on. And he's also done that before. Makeshift barriers. I mean, Destiny of the Daleks, he had that makeshift barrier so he could have a little chat with Davros first. A kind of bubonic space plague. Jungles, inhabiting Daleks, like you said, Rebek, and, of course, Ian earlier. Planet of Stones. He loves, Plane of Stones. He loves the names. The Daleks formula, like I said, being used. Talks on leadership, heroism, and war. There was a lot of that in the Daleks. But I do find, in the end, to me, with my little kid's brain there, I just thought this was just boys' adventure in space. Loved it. So, Hugh, I mean, are these criticisms?
I don't see there's an awful lot wrong with this. I mean, one of the interesting things that Terry Nation does do a lot of is try and make planets interesting. So they do have lots of different things. Ice Queen was sort of a brilliant idea and stuff like that. So all of that, I think, it's not just about ripping himself off. It's also about looking at things and trying to make them interesting. And yeah, he does use some of the same tropes, but I think, you have to then balance that out with the very fact that, despite the fact that I don't think he's the greatest writer in these terms, he is probably the second most important British science fiction writer for television after Nigel Neal.
Okay, yeah. I mean, it's an interesting one. I mean, it's been turned into, we'll talk about the Terra Nation estate and other Daleks in it, this and that, and they always make it sound like he's Mr. Commercial. But to be quite honest, that's the kind of the British snobbery of anybody who makes money out of an idea. It's about time we had more people who did that, to be quite honest.
Yeah, and I think it's unfair on the people who they'd come up with other ideas that they didn't necessarily have the nous to make sure that happened.
Yeah, unlike
Although, of course, there is this idea that Tech Nation actually ripped off Tony Hancock for the Daleks.
yes, who knows, Hugh, whether he did deliberately. I mean, a lot of writers echo other writers. It's a very hard thing to define sometimes about who chicken or egg, what came first sometimes. But all we can say is in the Doctor Who universe, he was successful, and I say good for him. And I have to say, I think there was enough of a reworking of the Daleks for it to be imaginative and fun. And even if you did know the Daleks' original plot, I just think you were driven so well by the conviction Doctor, John Pertwee, a great little cast there, and Joe Grant. Sometimes it was better to have one companion. They had three, of course, and they had to split them and scatter them everywhere, a bit Five Doctors-ish. Whereas this one, you could focus a little bit more. So I think it was different enough, certainly imaginative.
And again, I think it would be very hard for even people who were old enough to have watched the original one to remember it as closely, given the fact you didn't have video, didn't have things like that, in order to be that annoyed by it. And I also think it does develop it. So I do think there's the attempt to look at what the thals have become and what changes happened to them because of what happened in the Daleks. So it's not just a simple reworking.
No, it's not. It's not, and I think we have to address that in our burning issues, because it was known, wasn't it? Was it Barry Letts who said, it was for the genesis of the Daleks just before that we don't want to rehash. They were kind of starting to really get critical of him, weren't they? So that's fair enough. If a producer, calls the shots, it'd be nice for people to question things nowadays sometimes.
There is a story about Toe Nation where he wrote an episode of The Saint and the Baron, and it was both the same script. And what happened was the television company put both episodes on one evening, and they complained. They said, "Wait a minute, it's the same script, but just different characters." An episode of the Baron and the Saint together.
Whoa,
classic.
If you can get away with it, I suppose.
He still took the paycheck, though, I bet.
Well, that's it. I mean, to me, like I said earlier, the locations, that's not one of the sets, but I just find it so funny when you see the Daleks are parked in the TARDIS for the sake of filming.
It's a nice photograph.
It's lovely.
It's amazing they never actually did that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those. It should stay in fan fiction, I suppose. But the jungle, of course, the jungle to me as a kid, and I've got to speak as a 4-year-old, I remember these bits. I never saw the flat bit of the jungle where the Daleks would actually have to, navigate. To me, the rustling, the groaning of the jungle, it's got that vivid green. I know later on Planet of Evil is stunning, but I found this jungle mesmerizing. And equally, because I'm 4, I didn't know that the Daleks are in jungles a lot. I mean, we seem to come across them a fair bit, but I thought it was great. And the fungoids, and that was a great touch. I mean, if you want to make a story go from 3 to 4 to 5 episodes, just add different creatures and different nonsenses, add little perils. Loved it. I mean, the little tentacle that was about to attack Weber. Now, before we go on about the locations too much and how great or not Planet of the Daleks was, I think when we've all been on one of those all expenses paid, works trips. Well, I think the Dalek army was on a right little trick, and it was the Supreme Council and Dalek suss this out, because have a look at this. I've got the evidence on there on that monitor. It says laundry, sauna, lobby, kitchen. Yeah,
is it? I can't see it.
yeah. Honestly, I've got.
Oh my goodness!
Yes.
It does.
Is this a joke?
It could be a joke, as in it doesn't matter, because obviously nobody would ever get that detail. So the point is whether it was an inset joke, because I think these Daleks have a sauna. I mean, no wonder they weren't working hard. I mean,
Well, that would explain why they like the jungle so much.
well, this is it.
Like a good
Well,
steam.
Is that the jacuzzi behind me then?
So now you know why it's a 6 episode, and the Supreme Dalek said, "Hey, away, you know, you've had a long time here. We've been paying all your work expenses." I just thought that was classic. So yes, I had not noticed that before. So yes, great sets. As I've said in so many streams when we're not doing Planet of the Daleks, and Marty D likes this as well. He says a narrative should go sideways and up and down, like a new Earth. He always likes having a shaft or a ladder or something, because RTD sees where Terry Nation did this. And Terry Nation is a master of this one, and the lower level, getting trapped in the shift. Loved all that sort of stuff. If you had to teach a new writer of Doctor Who the type of a great example of how to do it, which location here is the most imaginative, the most perilous, the one that is classic Doctor Who? Would you say? I'll start with Jeremy.
Well, in this particular story.
In this story, yeah.
Yeah, I think the shaft scene, the ventilation shaft, is very good, and it's utilised well as part of the story. And again, the area of the Daleks, where they're in where they're semi-frozen, as it were.
Yes. Hugh, what are you thinking about?
Well, I just think that what works here well is what he's doing is having lots of different locations for danger. So you have ice, you have fire, you have lift shafts, you have things in the jungle that will eat you and spit at you, and fungus. I think it's one of those things where he does throw the kitchen sink at it, but that again, as you're saying about watching it whenever you're 4, when I was watching it when I was 8, turning 9, it's that amount of things. There's always something else happening, and I think that's one of the things about Terry Nation is that he makes an effort to make other things happen. They may be the same things he made happen in other episodes, but that's a different question.
I like the idea of the ice volcano as well, which is quite nice.
Yes. Oh, yeah, it's fantastic. Now, Brian, you mentioned the target cover and all the rest of it. There it is. And of course, it is one of the most iconic moments in this 6-parter, because it's being used on the VHS covers and everything. I mean, is this what got you into it? The illustrations and that target element there?
Well, that picture was burned into my mind for years, and it was just, I keep saying treat, because, well, it is. It was a treat to see that illustration come to life for the first time. And for being a quarry shot, I was actually quite impressed that they managed to make a quarry for once look like an alien landscape. It had a lot to, I take it they must have used a lot of dry ice and the sludge to make the molten
it was wallpaper paste.
They call it. It
apparently it was wallpaper based. Yeah.
There was so thanks, John.
Yes.
Oh, there were some. I think both Jeremy and Hugh touched on them, like, the crawling through the ventilation shaft, and not that far off from Planet of Evil. That was shot on film, I believe.
Yeah.
Which it just gives it that little more sense of realism, not realism, more theatrical, I guess. Like because when they shot that jungle in Planet of Evil, fantastic looking, and it was because the film just took away that plasticky, we've got you on real life video camera, and took it a step back. And this right here, fantastic the way they pulled this off. It was one of those rare quarry moments that worked, like really worked. Also the ventilation shaft scene, I loved that one as well. Especially how many people here are willing to admit that when they see a cliffhanger still they get chills?
Oh yeah.
Just a little chill.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, the one Rebecca is screaming, "It's not going to work. It's not going to work."
Yeah.
And then you hear that sting, and it cuts to credits. I get a little chill when that happens because she's panicking, and she does it really well.
And you that's all you need. I mean, sometimes what you need is somebody else shouting that it. I mean, we did Robots of Death, didn't we? And you know what was, I think, was it Toots who said we're gonna blow, and at the end of one of the cliffhangers you just get that, you know, you need the alarm and the shrieking. So yes, you say Rebecca's saying, you know, it's not going to work, and of course we all know the wonder of plastic. Unbelievable. Greta Thunberg.
I think that's one of, you're absolutely right though, that is one of the crucial things about cliffhangers, is it's the reaction of the actor makes it in those situations as much as the actual situation itself. So given the fact that people have had to be scared of bubble wrap on Doctor Who, it's how you react to it, and if they do it well, then you buy it.
Yeah.
The bubble wrap, I take it you're referring to the Ark in Space.
Yeah.
Terrified me as a child.
Well, since you've mentioned cliffhangers, let's kind of do it as a nice, neat segue. So there were 5 key cliffhangers in this story. Now, you know, we kind of judge it as in, I think Doctor Who should have cliffhangers. You've just basically said that as well, Brian.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
And so basically, which cliffhangers here were key or twee? Which cliffhangers worked and had a good payoff? Which ones less so? So, as a quick reminder, episode 1, the spray paint, Invisible Dalek. 2, 10,000 Daleks somewhere on this planet. Episode 3 was the one you were talking about, Brian, the parachute balloon thing. Is it going to go up? Because it never looked as who's going to take them anyway.
No, it doesn't actually.
Yeah, let's lose weight fast. You know how to do a quick kind of. You know, episode 4 ended with the grabbing the Thal bomber and taking him to the Daleks. That I'll say straight away, that did not bother me at all, because he wasn't a nice Thal. And then episode 5 was the Daleks spotted that the SPiridons had been shopping at Clark's or Timpson's for shoes. That's what seemed to be that one. So, which one, Jeremy, is a great cliffhanger and had a good payoff?
I would say the air shaft, the ventilator shaft, or whatever you want to call it, definitely, because you know the parachute's going to rip. It's ripping, and you know they're all going to go down the shaft if it all fails. So they've got to just grab onto the ladder, which is, I mean, it builds up the. You know, obviously the warm air up the shaft, that builds up as well, but the crescendo, it builds up to a crescendo. So I would say that definitely that one. I mean, we know the Daleks are there, but just putting the spray paint on just reveals that it's there, you know, and the fact that it's just discovered.
All their spray paint they wasted to make sure that the entire Dalek was visible. It's like that. Wouldn't the head just be enough?
Yes, he would be.
Head would be enough, but no, let's do the whole thing.
This Doctor,
I would have loved to see that.
Well, I don't know if you know him, but this Doctor, the third Doctor, is a bit like Lawrence Llewellyn-Bowen, and he wanted to finish off the job. He wanted to make it really sad.
I suppose they could have wrote it in and say, "Oh, the cloak, the invisible cloak, failed, and that's why all of the Dalek revealed itself."
And the other reason why I will never allow episode 1 as a great cliffhanger, apart from they're invisible now, is because it said Planet of the Daleks, so the giveaway was there. Why bother? Hugh, what was your favourite cliffhanger?
Yeah, I mean, I think with everyone else, I think the lift shaft works because there is proper tension. And in terms of that, the actors do it really well. It is Heath Robinson to start with, so and the build up of, you can see it ripping, but they don't know that it's ripping, and then they realise it's that's just how you do a cliffhanger. You could use that as an example for writing.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I agree. I agree.
I mean, I think that you're absolutely right. I mean, everyone knew the Daleks were there, and they'd appeared in the previous story, and it was a follow-on and stuff like that. But of course, what you don't get at the time is that's referencing sort of Dalek invasion of Earth in terms of the appearance, which is one of the great cliffhangers in terms of that, because that's brilliantly done. And they can't do it again, so they do it that way. So I sort of get it, and it works okay for what it does, but going up a lift shaft with a Dalek coming and Daleks at top, it's just proper tension.
The thing is, if you do start to see the pattern all the way through, because you've just mentioned the Dalek invasion of Earth, the Dalek coming out of the Thames. We've got a Dalek who's invisible. As you know, when we get to Remembrance, a Dalek can go up the stairs. As you know, it's like, can they reveal anything new about a Dalek? That he has a little gizmo, special pocket, that he, you know, it feels sometimes that they're trying to find another gimmick. But in those early days, it was proper stuff. That was the Banksy Dalek. So Brian, is episode 3 your favorite cliffhanger that works as well? I know you referenced it, but
yeah, that cliffhanger with "it's not going to work, it's not going to work," cut to credits. That was the best. I also had a very good laugh actually afterwards. I'd never ever noticed this before, but when they said it's going to break and the doctor says, "Quick, jump to the sides" or whatever, almost immediately everybody climbs up out of the top of the shaft, and the doctor is hanging with his leather gloves, and one rope goes down too short, and the other gentleman says, "Well, here, let me try mine," and it goes down all the way, and it's got a loop, and he puts his foot in it, I believe, and then holds onto the rope, and they pull him up, and all I can think is, the laddery thing is right there. You got feet. Give the guy a break. Put your feet inside and start climbing up again. But instead, they had to do the whole rope over the shoulder. And,
I think it was because he was on the last run. I suppose he was holding on, so because his arms were getting a bit tired. So I think that's it.
But his feet could have. I don't know. He could have done something too. But it was great. No, that great. And then of course the pushing of the rocks over the edge to take out the Dalek.
Yeah.
Well, it was great stuff. Even though it was done before, it was still great.
Well, one thing that doesn't work is when I compare Classic Who to New Who, and you know it's the item that I love to do because what would the shooting doctor do? I can't help it. I'm just being cheeky because this is the way you do it. If you're a critic of New Who in any shape or form, use humor. So I've got a few items here, you know, I've got them lined up, but they also tee us up to talk about certain scenes in more detail as well. So it kind of is a double whammy. Now, this is the bit when the thals said, you know, if you use this anti-fungoid spray, it cures you, and that's to kind of remind us all that Joe is still in peril in that thals spaceship. Now, obviously, I think the Ncuti 15th Doctor would have dealt with this differently when they're going to give him a spray. What do you reckon? You're thinking. Well, I'm thinking. Obviously, he did. Go on. Sorry.
Yeah. So presumably, he would have said, "I used to have a job doing that in Debenhams."
Yes.
yes. I think he'd want to know what it is, whether he calls it scent or perfume or aftershave. I think he'd like to know. And I think he is the diva doctor. So I think, you know, John Pertwee, the action man James Bond doctor. Well, the diva doctor might want to know whether it's a cheap scent or a posh scent. And where do you get it from? Any thoughts, Brian? It's going to get worse.
One that I would have phrased so delicately. It would be more of a public service announcement than just a straight up what would Ncuti say or do. But
what would the Daleks
he could
say?
just turn the camera and say, you know, you can avoid fungus altogether by using a prophylactic. Wink, and then back to the story.
Just you know, at some stage, someone's saying that we obviously have a president-elect of the United States who's selling perfume.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Maybe that's where he would have gone. I don't know.
Magnetism. This one just made me laugh, and I had to get it in somewhere. The moment me and Jamie just laughed our heads off. It's some of the lines, like in Robots of Death, when he said, you know, what was it? Where's all the big ones gone? And with this one, when I know it's a serious moment, but when the John Pertwee doctor says, "Is the load getting a bit heavy?" Now, I immediately thought the shooty doctor was saying you shouldn't be looking there. I mean, it's as if he's filled his pants. Is the load getting a bit heavy? I mean, I just thought it made me laugh my head off because I just thought strange line. But I don't know. I don't know if you want to throw something in there.
So I'm on a serious point. I'm really struggling to see the shitty doctor in this at all, in part because of what Pertwee was, and also overlaying that the way the nation slightly changed the character in order to make him slightly more like Hartnell, or not deliberately, but I just think that's what he did. I struggle to see how he fits into this because there's an awful lot of wisdom being imparted by the Doctor, and that's just not what shitty does.
There's no humour in this story either, so it's pretty much a straightforward science fiction story. And,
unintentional humour. There are a few moments in this that had me roaring out loud.
Well,
if we don't get to, I'll remember to bring them up.
Throw them in. You see, when we come to the main criteria, which is whether this is proper Who, and we'll come to that obviously after this. I will say he's Dr. Killjoy. I mean, every time they want to celebrate, he says, "Nope, not yet." He's a little swine. But this is a serious moment. I have to say, I did enjoy these moments, and I know he does a similar thing in the Daleks. But this is the big balance between when people say Doctor Who's always been political. I wouldn't call this political. This is actually just saying basic common sense, actually. I mean, I've got an item with some of his speeches, especially near the end. But I have to say, he's bothered about people's leadership or capacity to perform and factions and that. I think this is great, really, but it's not political. I think it's the Doctor being very insightful and observant.
Yeah, and this is where it sort of pays back in terms of the Daleks, because he's recognising the impact that adventure had on the thals, because they are different and they are more warlike. And given that that's what they were asked to be in the Daleks, I think he's conscious. Me reading into it, but I think there's an element of Terry Nation writing that he's conscious of that and trying to deal with it. So it's a bit like, in some ways, the face of evil in terms of the actions of the Doctor have that, and then he gets to see them, and he reacts to them. Although that's not actually part of the story, and you wouldn't necessarily get that. And certainly, I didn't get it when I was watching it the first time.
Well, I did get the first time, and maybe this is where the shooty Doctor might have been interested, is the trouser snake. That snake coming through the bushes that was going to get...
oh, you English!
because I think the
colorful metaphors.
I think the shooty Doctor would have said, "Why is he gone for you and not me?" Because the Doctor, he didn't attack him. He was just sat there in the corner. And the size of that weapon, I mean, so anyway, the trouser snake tentacle, and I thought, I bet the shooty Doctor would have been so jealous.
He picked up and said, "What am I, chopped liver?" Well, there we are.
If I could comment on the political aspect you mentioned earlier, there is one scene that some people could argue was political, but again, like you said, I think it's more just common sense. When I watched it, was at the very end when he warned all of the thals who survived. He says, "Make sure when you go home not to make war sound like a fun adventure. Tell them about the fear and the danger, the people who didn't come back. Don't turn it into something glamorous that people are going to want to keep going." I thought that was absolutely wonderful piece of dialogue. There were two sets of dialogue in this entire story. That one was one of them, and the other one was telling, I can't remember, the cellmate that he had, telling him that courage and bravery are being afraid and doing what you have to do anyway.
Yeah.
And that's what summed up Sarah Jane Smith so wonderfully. That's why I loved Sarah so much, because she was scared sometimes. She had to do anyway. And that's one
So
of
Brian-
my favorite lines. That whole story.
Brian, what I'll do is that in reverse order. So while I'm in this is classic, and I think this happens every time when we do a review. When we do the shooty doctor, we end up jumping to a doctor because he does irritate how he's written and all the rest of it. But there's more to come. However, what you've just been saying, Brian, I might as well just say on the dialogue front then. Yeah, there's a few quotes I grabbed, especially the one you mentioned at the end there. There's a considerable... Oh, he doesn't have to go to town, doesn't he? He says there's a considerable difference between courage and reckless stupidity. I tell you what, he does not hold back. You know, when I get the impression that the 15th Doctor, the way he's being written, is he wants to be everybody's friend. And there's that kind of element. That's the bit you were talking about, Brian. When you get back to Skaro... You'll all be national heroes. Everybody will want to hear about your adventures. So be careful how you tell that story, will you? Don't glamorize it. Don't make war sound like an exciting and thrilling game. Tell them about the members of your mission that won't be returning. Tell them about the fear. Otherwise, your people might relish the idea of war, and we don't want that. And linked to that, I remember he said at one point, didn't he, to the thals, you don't want to turn into the Daleks because then you've lost. And so, you know, this is great for being a little kid. You weren't getting these speeches, so to speak. You were just enjoying the fact that he was very in charge and caring. As you get older, it pays off because you're going, oh, he's right. He's actually really right. I mean, the point about what he just said then, to me, knowing a bit about John Pertwee's history, I mean, he was by fluke. He wasn't on the hood when it was shot, when it was torpedoed. And by fluke, he could have been killed, couldn't he? And he knew a lot of people on the HMS Hood. And so you just think, he's given a line there by Terry Nation, but it'll have resonated because, of course, you know, there's a lot of people who don't come back. And yeah, we've got to be careful about that. Some people have made an argument saying that they tried to make a point about the Vietnam War at the time, but they said that would have been accidental and Terry Nation no way would have gone there.
I think there's a resonance to the Vietnam War in terms of the use of jungles and things like that. I don't think it's oh look, this is the Vietnam War in any sense of a metaphor. I just think there's an awareness of it happening and that being done. But I also think that, you know, the speech at the end is one of those things which would be certainly something which I don't think would be at all political at the time.
No. And I don't think it. I still don't see it as political in many ways. I think it's like Remembrance Sunday. It's just actually saying, let's remember those who didn't come back. Yeah. I mean, this one, there's a lot about courage, isn't there? And in this one, courage isn't just a matter of not being frightened. It's being afraid and doing what you have to do. Now, as a little kid, that'll go over your head. But when you read the book and when you see those lines, you're going, oh my God, that's really, yeah, that's true. And actually, you know, I could have used that in assembly if I so wished, couldn't I? Because, yeah, the courageous one is the one who does it, knowing that they are scared. It's amazing. It's really good stuff.
And that's done quite well with Kodo, and Tom Priest does him as a character well. And, you know, the setup to that line is well done.
Yeah. So you teed it up there, Brian, but you can see it, you know, when we're trying to do shooty who, you can't help but actually go, yeah, but wasn't that bit good and wasn't that bit good? And so I'll have to scare you all, your heebie-jeebies again. So the trouser snake wouldn't get you. There you go. So what about this one then? Brave self-sacrifice. He thought Joe was in there and he jumped out. I mean, it's a split-second thing, you know, and he risked it. The Daleks could have easily just exterminated him. They were about to fire at the ship and blow it up. So if they were about to fire, that could have hit him. So yeah, self-sacrifice doctor, action hero.
That's right.
However, the shooty doctor, what would he have done?
I think this is possibly where he's closest, because I think there is a element of guilt in the shitty doctor about so much that jumping in front of things is one of his traits. That's why he stood on a landmine, because he rushed about without thinking.
Yeah, he's a blunderbust. I can't see the Ncuti doctor. I can see him just crying in the corner, not even thinking about.
Bingo!
Yeah, I know. We're playing Ncuti bingo here, aren't we? But Jeremy, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, it just really about the small little spaceship, how much it was shaking when Joe Grant was walking inside it. But that's all I can really say about that. And of course, all the things that were thrown about when the invisible Wester was inside the spaceship.
He obviously was I don't know, badly brought up or a stroppy teenager, because I tell you what, he threw that stuff around. But yes, it was to show that they could do invisible effects type thing, wasn't it? But yes, it's a good point to make about. I mean, I love that spaceship, and I love the scene. One of the to me, that was one of the moments as a 4-year-old I do remember. I was scared when she had to hide in that cupboard, and she could just see out. I mean, it just. And the heavy breathing. I mean, honestly, I don't think it would be allowed to explain all this, but this heavy breathing SPiridons after this very good-looking young woman. Yeah. You know, it's not really, doesn't sound good as a script. What were you going to say, Brian?
Well, I just, again, yesterday, for the first time, watching that when she hid in the cupboard.
Yeah.
I was thinking, if we turn that camera the other way around, is there going to be, is that the loo?
Well, yes.
I really thought they locked her in the bathroom.
It's possible, isn't it? It was a tiny room.
It is. It's very, you don't see behind her. Hide in the toilet. Caravan? It's the last place they'll look.
Yes, not a good place to look. So there you go. That was the flimsiness of thals spaceships. This bit, his good old tape. The tape. We all have
cassette tape. It's a cassette tape. Yes.
Cassette tape that can bamboozle a Dalek brain. And but the thing is, he started to play it, and he heard Joe's voice, and he saw how hard Joe was working to help him. And now she's dead, according to him. And I think this is a point in hand, everybody, because the 15th Doctor. Shall we play the game, Brian? The bingo. He would have been sobbing by now. And he would have also said the line, because he said it when Ruby Sunday left. He said, "I can't cope without you. I have grown because of you. Because you in my life has made me grow," to the point where it's almost as if he can't deal without having her. John Pertwee's Doctor wasn't acting like that. He was just acting quietly sad.
Mm-hmm. And he spent considerably much more time with Joe than Ncuti Doctor did with I'm just going to say Blondie McBlonde. Honestly, it's because I gave up after the second story, so I keep forgetting names sometimes.
I'm always tempted to call her Ruby Tuesday, but yeah, Ruby Sunday.
Ruby, there we go, Ruby. I can see Russell T Davies saying Ruby Tuesday. Isn't that a wonderful name?
Oh,
it's like, well, if you want to rip off the Rolling Stones, yes, it's a wonderful name.
Now this is
Ruby
almost
Sunday.
This is almost close to the bit you mentioned, though, Brian, was there's the Daleks, you know, burning down the door. They're going to get in soon. And there's all the panic going on at the end of episode 3. And the Doctor's going through, he's like in the charity shop going through the shelves. He's going through all this bric-a-brac, you know. We're going to die. Hold on a minute. I like this plastic. Hold on. Do you know, they haven't dusted it yet. Do you know what? He'd irritate me no end, because why is he looking at plastic? So anyway.
But this is the genius of the writing, where the Doctor finds odds and ends and puts it together to make, have a plan of escape or whatever, to win through the day.
It's as I was mentioning whenever we talked about Robots of Death, Brendan, it's the great egg race. Which Jeremy will be old enough. Brian, you will never have come across this. It was a program on British television in the 80s, and it was you got given tasks to do with basically random stuff. The main thing was to try and propel an egg without breaking it as fast as possible across for as long a distance as possible. But they would do other things as well, and they had a sort of professor in charge of it, Professor Heinz Wolf, who was sort of like a mad doctor, and so it was all it. And to an extent, I wonder whether there's something that then says, is this actually making fun of what the props department had to do? Because they must have gone into cupboards and gone, oh, apparently we've got to do something that goes up a lift shaft for X amount of minutes.
The one thing I will say, and you know me, I'm being mischievous with my comparisons. Well, I'll make the nice point first, which is this Doctor's very calm under fire, and the 15th certainly is not. He'd probably be bashing the metal wall with anger. But one thing I think I should say fairly is, if the Doctor's going to get them out of this situation with plastic, just like you say, and everyday stuff that's around and about. Well, what about when the shooty Doctor helped them with a spoon? I mean, a spoon solved everything.
Yeah, but you could see what the plastic was doing. You couldn't see what the spoon was doing. That's the problem.
Yeah.
If you have a solution to a problem, unless you're doing something meta, then there is no spoon. It's really not a solution.
Yeah, I've teed you up nicely there, because one has explanation, one doesn't.
But we're also assuming that plastic that's in the story is actually plastic, whether it is a different type of material, but it's similar to plastic.
It does look very,
but it does look very much like plastic.
This is a funny moment, though, in some ways, because the seconds before this, he was getting a bit smug. Talk about hubris. This Doctor, the Dr. Killjoy, I call him at the moment in this story, when don't celebrate. He was getting a bit cocksure here, because he was saying the Dalek will not catch up with us. We're doing well on this type thing, and he made a point, and then it was then that it was ripping. And of course, but I love the third Doctor when he shouts and jump, whatever, out, and he really is extremely commanding.
Yeah.
Even though he might have ballsed it up himself, but he's in command. The 15th.
So I take the it won't catch up not as smugness but as reassurance.
Yeah.
I just said to them, don't worry, because if they start worrying, then that causes other problems and things like that. So it's just one of those things that if everything goes well, we're okay, but we know it's not going to.
It's also the fact that he's come up with this clever idea. So he's quite pleased with himself.
Actually, a little too pleased and overconfident, because he's making claims about, I might take up hot air ballooning.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like everything's gonna be fine. Next thing you know, oh crap! Everybody jump. That's what happened.
The truth is, Brian, that's where he is a little bit like the 15th Doctor, because the 15th Doctor has this kind of, over exuberance and confidence in things which are completely misplaced. So for a second, you could say there's a resonance there of that. This one, I'm just being cheeky again, when they're at the plane of stones and it's dark and they all have to huddle together. I'm sorry, but the 15th Doctor wouldn't have been bothered about fire, I don't think at all. I think he'd have thought of other ways of warming himself up. But I don't know. I'm being naughty. But and on the last one, this is the most famous one. We said it's the iconic image from Planet of the Daleks. The third Doctor is wrestling the Dalek to push him into the ice water. The 15th Doctor, of course, said he'd do something else with the Dalek, didn't he? And he said he would
work it.
He would twerk in front of it.
Well, he's facing the wrong way.
He would.
Well, John wouldn't do it.
I'm sure the 15th Doctor would have just said, just be careful where you put your sink plunger. I'm honestly, I just think it's all so sexual. I mean, I'm not the naughty one. Doctor Who's gone sexual. It needs an intimacy coordinator. So I'm just on trend. So nobody can accuse me of being a sleazebag anymore, because it's just on trend. So. Right, the main item when we start to really judge any story, and is it true Who or boo Who? is this good old Doctor Who? Is it consistently, is that clearly and recognizable the Doctor? That kind of thing. And whether we agree with that, we pick our examples and we enjoy talking about it. So, Jeremy, where would you like to go on that judgment and talking about it?
I would say it is definitely classic Doctor Who, and it's John Pertwee doing his thing, which is great as the Third Doctor. I'd find it very hard to fault this story. I'd certainly give it about 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. You judge it in a way we don't judge. How very dare you?
Well, I'm going to give it 9 out of 10 anyway, for pure enjoyment.
Jeremy, it was always a classic. I remember when we did this. Remember, Hugh, when we started this, and if you got people on that say, "I'm giving it,"
Everyone does it.
They'd always say, "I'm giving it 4 out of 10." I'm going, who's inventing this, Max?
Give it A++.
For enjoyment value, I think it's second to none. Because it features the Daleks, and of course John Pertwee at his best, even though he didn't like working with the Daleks, funny enough.
I know it.
And he got the most Dalek stories, didn't he? I think
he did. He's convincing with them, though, isn't he? He's very convincing with them.
It's like saying, how can we annoy John Pertwee? I don't know, give him another Dalek story.
We'll do a round or two of this because it is such a classic story that it's nice to go dig in at some of it. Hugh,
I actually think if you wanted to say name an archetypal Doctor Who story, this is one of the ones you'd go to. That's not necessarily that it's the greatest or the best, and I do have problems with it. But you've got Daleks, you've got Terry Nation writing, you've got, in part of that, it's probably a bit too long and it's got padding and is running about. It is referencing an earlier series in quite so much detail, but it's absolutely classic Doctor Who. You couldn't get much more Doctor Who than this.
Yeah.
It's got the sort of right sort of beats. It's got the right sort of discussions. It's got all sorts of things going on. Is it my favourite story? No. But is it? I think you would be hard pushed to name another story that isn't quite as Doctor Who as this one is.
It's certainly a worthy Doctor Who, a Dalek story, I would say. There's no doubt about that.
I mean, I love the Death to the Daleks one. I do like in the Pertwee era. This is the standout one to me, and Death to the Daleks is up there. But, but Plans of the Daleks, just yes, as you said, Hugh, it has a nice vibe and rhythm and feel to it that is very recognizably visually everything. It's Doctor Who, and he really is on top of his game now as the Doctor. He's a bit like Capaldi went, the hair just gets a bit more bouffant, he gets a bit more kind of, and he's playing around with his suits now and all the rest of it. The Green Death, he's got a different one on, and I just think we're right on the money now, and he is so powerful here. And as I said when we did the Carnival of Monsters, the Third Doctor needed more stories in space. The Exile, for whatever reason, some people adore Unit, and that's not my debate point, but I just wish the Third Doctor was in space more because he is so much more commanding then.
And again, sort of in terms of the development, as mentioned earlier, this is Joe Grant doing stuff, and it's because they've developed that character, because Katy Manning has helped develop that character, and because you can see that Katy Manning and John Pertwee act really well together. It's
also developed because of the time that it was made, in terms of the fashions, in terms of the hairstyles as well. So that's also shaped it a little bit.
Now, it was mentioned just then, you just threw it in there, Hugh, so let's do it. We're talking about, the story, is this classic Doctor Who? One element that didn't seem classic Doctor Who to me, even at the time, obviously as a 4-year-old, you just want adventure. But as you watch again and again and read about it, this bit was the Lartep Joe kind of liaison, because that doesn't happen in every story with any companion. I get the fact that they're teeing up the audience for saying she's going to leave. She's now grown. The character arc is brilliant, really. She starts in Terror of the Autons as a much younger apprentice sort of thing, and she's kind of grown into a woman. And of course, men are noticing her. And I think this was obviously just to tee us up, wasn't it? That she's not going to hang around. But it just didn't feel like Doctor Who. Of course, RTD would say, can we have a whole 40 minutes of this, please? What was it were you going to say, Brian?
Oh, no, I agree 100%. I understand what you mean by how they're teeing us up. But, yeah, this just felt totally out of place, especially I hate it when a character says after spending, I don't know, a couple of nights in the jungle together with somebody, I love you. It may have been a great night in the jungle, but do you really love them? Do you really love them? I have to say no.
I think the phrase would have been, look, we've always got the plane of stones. We'll
always have the plane of stones.
Well, the character is an alien, I suppose. So, I mean, maybe thals work differently that way.
I would put that on a t-shirt. I would put that on a t-shirt. We'll always have the plane of stones.
We will. It was a very long night, and yes, there may have been a lot of eyes watching, but who cared?
Wasn't Jo supposed to be having a relationship with Captain Yates? I think wasn't she supposed to be? That was the plan, but it didn't quite work out that way.
She kind of went on dates, didn't she? Or she said she had.
She wanted to. Personally, I was a Sergeant Benton fan. I always call him the sweet soldier. I'd love, if I'm gonna do the whole ranking of unit characters, I put John Levine, Sergeant Benton above Captain Yates. He's a lovable guy. It's a lovable character.
Yeah, he's a lovable character, but he was a bit of a blunderer. If you look at some of this.
Yes, the amount of times we heard yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. Carry him if you have to. Use your initiative. I just love that stuff.
Isn't this the essence of it? If I watch Star Trek Discovery, Michael starting to have a relationship with whoever Book, and then you have all these other things, and you're going, can we just have a story about leadership, a story about the political machinations of intergalactic warfare, and just get on with it? Why do we have to get bogged down in soap opera? I allow this one, knowing I don't like this, because I know they are teeing up the audience, and actually good for Barry Letts to set up a proper character arc for nearly all their characters, to be quite honest. Even because the Doctor has a character arc with Metabellus 3. I mean, he has a atonement, doesn't he? So I actually think that's lovely to do, and so I allow that. But it's not being Jo-centric. The whole season isn't about Jo. But there needed somewhere to have somebody cast an eye on her. The thing that doesn't work, lads, is Lartep obviously thinks whatever happened at the plane of stones was memorable, to the point where he wants her to go to Skaro with him. Then she says no, and then he just waves. I'd have fought for her.
It's one of those things where they've sort of squeezed it in, as you say, to do the foreshadowing, and that. And he does look a bit like Professor Grant and Jones, and so there is a bit of that, and it does finish a bit oddly, but I think it's allowed in what it is. And again, what it does do, which is quite well, is it shows that she's capable of dealing with that very easily, so that whenever she does leave, it's for the right reasons. It's just not because some bloke from the Plane of Stones that you've had a bit of roll around with has said, "Fancy Skaro."
Yeah. So I mean,
I just.
If you want the final word on this segment, Brian, because you might put it a different way to me, because I've already said my piece, which is I'm trying to explain to people who like to say in the thread sometimes, excuse me, you lot are always going on about sex in the TARDIS, romance and all the rest of it, and here you are saying he's a free pass. But is there a reason this is allowed, Brian, that you can explain to the audience who might think we are very contrary and just like Classic Who and give it a free pass? when you
No,
who can't do romance?
I could. Well, I mean, as I said, I don't particularly like this bit. Now, when Hugh explained, it's meant to tee us up for the fact that we're heading back home. I just suddenly had it pop into my head. This could have been done so much better, as if Joe was constantly looking at him. And you could see that there was something missing. So when she says at the end of the episode, I want to go home, I want to go home, I think that would have worked a lot better. You could see that Joe was suddenly yearning for something else. She was maybe getting a little bit tired of going through time and space, and she wanted to find somebody. I think that would have worked a lot better, and I think they could have done it too.
Yeah, because
instead they went with all the hand holding through. I don't know how many episodes it was, and I love you, or I found a reason. I found a reason to stay alive, and it's like, whoa, buddy, you just met me. I'm gonna let go of you.
Yeah, hold on, you're a bit intense, you.
It's the thal chat up line.
Yeah, I know. This has been 1 minute, and you are stalking me. Excuse me. Just back off.
What happens on the plane of stones stays on the plane of stones.
Do you know, big finish, I've never gone there.
I must have missed all this first time round, but then again, I was only about 10, so, you know.
My hormones are kicking in now. No,
the gold Dalek.
Supreme Dalek.
Dalek Supreme.
What's the
resist.
Yeah.
Flashlight not included. He has no torch.
Well, you see, Brian, we have hand puppets. I was just getting worried what the hell was... Excuse me. This is not the plane of stone.
Exterminate. Whoa.
You see, I know.
Sorry, Brendan couldn't resist.
You couldn't resist. I tell you what, this is going downhill. I'm kind of, mind you, I've got the intimacy watch to come yet, so I mean,
everybody just drops what they're doing. Intimacy watch.
But I do want to say on True Who or Boo Hoo, on the Doctor, I mentioned, I've said it a few times, the Dr. Killjoy, but how many times in this story, and I go with it as a kid that, he's very in charge, but God, sometimes the Third Doctor can get quite bossy and patrician. I mean, he was very good on human nature, about leadership and courage and everything. He's really good there in this story. And then another touch is he's a killjoy regarding they are celebrating because they've just saved their own lives. And for a second, the adrenaline's kicking off and he goes, no, we haven't got time for this. I mean, you're thinking, oh, God, it's a bit abrupt. And there were a few times he did that. Then telling off Joe for leaving the TARDIS, a bit like, I don't know if that was the test to say, I'm safeguarding you, but obviously he has to realize she's now a grown woman and she was doing it for the right reasons. So, back off, mate. Whereas it's a shame in Rogue that he didn't think this more carefully about Ruby Sunday disappearing with the childer. But, yeah, there's. I
think that's obviously there in order for her to push back, and again, that's the setup in terms of that she's not only capable of leaving, but it's the right thing to do, and so in terms of character arcs. It's difficult because you've got different writers and things like that, and I don't think they were necessarily looking at it in the detail that we might look at things now. But I think it's a reasonable approach that he would get upset because he feels as if he failed her, and at the same time she pushes back and said, "Look, this is what you've taught me to do."
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was one of those classic moments when you saw the growth there. Mind you, some of the language is of its time. When he said, well, there was your tutorial on bravery, I thought that would have gone down like a lead balloon in class. I'm now going to give you a tutorial. No way. And it's sometimes the Doctor preaches a little bit over all the stories, a little bit. We now are in preachy times. But of course, can you imagine the shooty doctor saying, I'm now going to do a tutorial on mental health? And you think, oh, for God's sake, let me just switch over and see what's on BBC Two. You know, it's like tutorial.
Unfortunately, I can imagine that.
yeah. I know.
But possibly he would do the tutorial through the medium of dance.
Yes, he might. Yeah, there's a way of letting it out. Let it out. That might be important. Anyway, good old Katy Manning. I mean, I can't knock Katy Manning. She had a great part. She gave it everything. She was great in Doctor Who, wasn't she? And I remember not wanting her to leave as a little kid because she was like a kind of an older sister or something. But yes, it's classic Doctor Who. You had the telepathic link to the Time Lords. So you had a bit of Gallifrey hint there.
You got the pull-out bed. The
pull-out bed. Well, you know that.
I love that. That was my favourite. That I always wanted one.
That set us.
Don't know why.
Well, that set us up. Poor J&T thought, "Oh, I'll have Nissa's bed, Adric's bed, Tegan's bed." You know, it sets up for the 80s where we can have beds everywhere. My God, it was like some dodgy B&B in the 80s. The TARDIS, but I know. But fancy having it's not very private. I tell you what, my intimacy coordinator head is on here. His bedroom was in the console room. In other words, Joe had to always tiptoe past, you know, I mean, well, no privacy in this TARDIS. I think safeguarding, I'm sorry. You would have been on this like a rash. However, Hugh, can you remember, I know you've had counselling since, but when Jodie Whittaker was the Doctor, right? Can you remember when there was that awful moment in the Flux when they landed in the TARDIS and there was a bed?
Oh yeah, I remember.
Yeah, they landed on a bed in the console room. So actually, there you go. There's your link with Planet of the Daleks.
Hmm.
I'm so glad I gave up on her after episode.
Yeah.
Brian, I'll pick it as a review item, and then you'll have to and have nightmares. There you go.
You wouldn't dare. You wouldn't dare. What am I talking about? You wouldn't do that.
And of course, everybody says Jane Howe, she was in EastEnders, Dirty Den's mistress. Yes, we know she was. Yep. That was Rebecca. Yep. But of course,
was great.
But Brian, you were talking earlier about, and of course, all the lads here will definitely talk about. I know is him.
Bernard Horsfall.
Yes. I love this actor. Absolutely love this actor.
Bernard Horsfall.
Yeah.
First, was his first appearance, or no?
No.
Actually, I think it wasn't just the War
Gulliver?
Games.
Mind Robber.
Oh yeah,
Mind Robber.
Plays
There
Gulliver.
we go. Yeah. I knew there was one before it, but I couldn't remember.
The thing is, when you say about, I'm asking about, is this Doctor Who, true Doctor Who and all the rest of it? But sometimes there's an element where there's one of the actors who he could play millions of parts in Doctor Who, but he's there and he's different in every one. It's clearly him, but I'm as
he does a great hero and leader in this episode,
yes.
and then in The Deadly Assassin. Almost a reluctant villain. Yeah. He didn't. He didn't want to take things as far as they went. But I absolutely. I don't usually throw the word adore around, but there's just some people, some actors, for whatever reason. I've told you before, the American actor Dabney Coleman. If anybody remembers the movie 95, Lily Tomlin, he has a place in my heart. I don't know why. He passed away a couple of months ago. It hit me very hard. The only time that really got me, aside from doctors and actors within the show, Bilal, the actor who played Bilal in Death of the Daleks,
104.
He died yesterday or the day before.
Yeah.
104.
But when Terrence Dix died, I remember waking up and sitting in the kitchen and crying over a cup of coffee when my girlfriend came downstairs. She was like, "What's wrong? Who died?" And when I told her, I was not laughed at. She knew that I loved. She knew that I loved who, but she knew that I loved. I've watched all the interviews with Terrence Dix and whatnot. I'm going on, but yeah, Bernard, I absolutely loved.
And the thing is, sometimes they are so recognizably and identifiably linked to Doctor Who that, as you say, with Terrence Dix and anybody, in their passing or when you see them, you just go, there's a go-to place for you or memory. I'm in my TARDIS, but I can't be bothered dusting. Watch this. Look at that. I mean, that looks scary out there, but I can't be bothered. I'm Dr. Killjoy today, so I'm going to pretend I'm ill. Oh, Joe, oh.
Doctor, what's wrong?
Oh, I don't feel very well. I think it's a Time Lord coma. You couldn't go and do some shopping for us, and get some spuds and some B&M Daleks.
I'm really scared. It's like I'm coming to a cliffhanger moment. It's okay, honey babes. It's only me, the shooty doctor. I'm trying to increase my range of acting. I'm actually playing the gay SPiridon, Sebastian.
Watch out! Stop the celebrations. We got away from the Dalek. That's all we did. We've got to hide somewhere. We've got to get away. Now, who the hell are you? You've just appeared in this plot.
I'm Lartep.
Larchep, Jockstrap, Claptrap, whatever your name is. I know why you're here. You just want to get your leg over on my insistence. That's unruly. So, we need to hide from the Daleks, because that one, luckily, is still thawing out. So where can we go to hide?
I think we need to take Joe to the Plane of Stones.
Plane of Stones? That sounds very, very elaborate, but... hold on, I know what you're up to. You want a patio. You just want to be somewhere with my assistant on her own.
Somewhere on this planet there's 10,000 Daleks.
Come on, give us a kiss, Joe.
Oh no, I'm no go, Joe.
Oh, really? Oh. No Ncuti tonight for you two lovebirds, Larchep or Scalpel or whatever you're called. And, Joe, no shenanigans, because I think behind those rocks there's a lot of eyes. I think we're surrounded tonight, kids. I think we better light a fire or two. There's eyes everywhere. It's worrying, isn't it? I think we're in danger tonight.
It is. I wonder if they've seen too much.
What have you been up to? They're all thawing out because of the cost of living crisis. There's 6 of them. I think we need to get to B&M Peterlee and B&M Huddle the Hole later on and find the rest. Oh, I didn't see that lift shaft there. Sorry about that. Oh, are you all right, Joe? Hey, don't you get ideas, jockstrap, pet lip, whatever you're called. Oh God, the Daleks are here! The Daleks are here! Quick, I've got this genius idea. We could use these balloons to escape the lift shaft.
I think there's another reason why we're going up.
Now, this is still only the 10th anniversary of Doctor Who, but when you look back on, the budget and everything, I mean, Barry Letts went mad about the Dalek city interior, and he went mad about that Dalek army of models. And as you know, in Criteria 2, we tend to judge the direction, David Maloney, the music, Dudley Simpson, the costume, I've got the names there, I'll show you if you need them, design, actors, visual effects, that sort of thing. I give a special shout out to the kettle, the Supreme Dalek's kettle and his special torch. But do you know what? The Dalek headquarters, the noise that got me, and I was trying to work out what it was, because some of the sound effects in this story are fantastic. The jungle groans and noises, it's great. But in the Dalek headquarters, it was it sounded to me like Commodore 64 in the 1980s uploading a game. And you had to wait and hear all that sound. And that was just, it just took me back to having to wait with your little cassettes as you loaded another Commodore 64 game up. That was that one. And of course the Daleks, you know, the big bubonic plague thing that with the space virus they were inventing. To me, yeah, that was a great effect. It looked to me like some massive green slush puppy machine with a lethal hairdryer on top. That was vicious. But no, the fungi, I think my big standout is the fungoid plants, because do you know what? Their design made me think as a little kid that they were spies for the Daleks with their eye stalk. And so it just worked on that little kid level, you know? And they worked as in they were blooming lethal as. But the overall production, costume, how it looked, I thought, as you mentioned a long time ago now, Brian, the outside broadcast elements really worked, the crowry and all the rest of it. I didn't detect budget issues there. Jeremy, anything on this criteria?
No, I didn't detect budget issues. I think it was very well made. I mean, obviously, there's a few issues that over the years where they said, "Oh, yes, we saw that pot plant there with the it's got its pot there." So you know, but it's just where the camera lands, isn't it? You know, they don't detect the the BBC camera in the background that just comes into shot. You know? Yeah.
I mean, they managed to afford a few bamboo plants from Gardener's World to actually to move along. You know, it could have been one plant. In fact, there is a shot in the TARDIS with the 3 Daleks and the TARDIS interior, and you can see one lonely bamboo plant in a pot. You think, gosh, he had a big part. So, Hugh, on criteria 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with what's been said. I think, again, I'm not a big critic of bad special effects in Doctor Who because I didn't notice them as such at the time, and that's really what I judge it by, not by what it looks like now. I think that what it does benefit from is what we were talking about earlier, is having that small cast.
Yeah.
So I think they've done relatively well to get 6 weeks out of those actors, but it's worked well because of that, rather than trying to do cast of thousands. And in terms of having, looking back at the Daleks original, then there are just thals wandering about who do nothing, and that this smaller group gives more character to them and allows discussion in a different way. And I think that's one of the things where I don't think it's such a repeat of the Daleks. It's a development of it.
It would have been nice if they'd had where you have the mass of the Daleks, the toy Daleks. They could have obviously CGI'd it properly now.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I think they did.
They did in the Blu-ray, yeah.
Yes.
Effects, yeah.
Yeah.
And it was quite the improvement. I had one thing to say was inside the Dalek City, like you were saying, with the little, you could hear all the little, look at the floors, you see all the imperfections and the creaks and all that bit. But there was one scene just after the virus was, the bacteria was released by Wester. We could have had a sudden exterior shot to Ncuti. What's wrong? And then a tear just running down his face.
A single tear.
He just knows. But do you remember those toys that you would put on the floor and you would push them and push them and push them and wind them up and then you would let them go? And yeah. What on earth was with that Turbo Dalek when they popped the lid off?
Yeah.
You know the one I'm talking about. They're just like emergency. And then this Dalek just goes, and he like, I'm getting out of here.
The thing is, Brian, there was always, I remember in the Remembrance of the Daleks, the Emperor Dalek, as in Davros, they soon have an escape pod. I tell you what, they're chicken out fast. I tell you what, they don't face the consequences.
And so I wonder, is this the one? Is this the Dalek that was just a model and gets moved by someone kicking it?
Oh, he goes flying.
Yeah, so I think what it was is this was one of the ones that they had that was a model which didn't really do anything, and how they moved it was someone just gave it a bloody kick. So obviously, it was not exactly.
Kicking Daleks.
The speed that Dalek went reminded me almost of the Dalek movie, the Dalek Invasion of Earth, when the magnetic core, and then they were going at the clappers. It was that speed, wasn't it? And I thought that Dalek he's not a team player. He was out of there in a shot. He was going, if there's a crack in that door, I'm not
a team player.
He wasn't. I'm part of
there's no I in Dalek.
There isn't. But you see, the dialogue of Terry Nation is always Dalek unit, report. I mean, there should have been teachers, but I found it fascinating that Dalek just thought, hey, stuff any orders, I'm off. And of course, I loved that Dalek, Supreme Dalek, when he said, "We are not happy with you, with what's been going on, and I'm going to exterminate you. This is the decision of the Supreme Council." And we all know that Terry Nation didn't like the evil of the Daleks, Emperor of the Daleks, so he came up with his Supreme Dalek. And it's very British, isn't it? There's a council. There's a council. There's a Dalek council. Now we have a Dalek parliament, unfortunately. Thank you, Moffat. But this never worked for me, the torch. If we talk about Criteria 2, the torch, it was a bit Jamie and the Magic Torch. And I thought it's either too bright or it's not on. And you'd like to see them flashing as they talk.
Yeah. I'm not even a fan of the bunny ears.
Those are jam jar ears.
Yeah,
jam jars.
When they brought the show back, I really was hoping that the Daleks would have those little, what'd you call them, jam jar, the little eggshell looking ones.
Yeah,
these big ones just look like bunny ears out of a retro 50s sci-fi robot that they could have just gotten rid of. I don't like these at all. So the combination of those, that's a movie Dalek, right? That they just modified.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. It's one of Terry Nation's, isn't
it? Yes, it's Terry Nation.
So they added the torch, and I believe they seem to have blacked out those vertical
slots
on the inside. Yeah, so it looks more. Yeah. I don't like that look either.
It looks like the rings are freestanding. But obviously they're not, because they have to have obviously some support to divide them.
Yeah.
But the indicator lights on the previous Daleks, I think they're from a Morris from the 1960s.
Well, one of the things I would say when it's on production values and budget and stuff like that came across to me is, well, the MFI, I wouldn't say IKEA furniture bed in the TARDIS. I mean, it just didn't. It wasn't space age, was it?
I loved that. I actually love the gold Dalek as well, Torchy. I don't know why, but I do. I did then. Yeah, I did then. I don't know why.
Well, it resonated.
I think it was, it was modern, if not more than that. So, in terms of what used to, it's just something that looks a bit modern and a bit clean.
I think also the fact is when character options brought out the gold Dalek, it sold very, very well. The sets, the sets cost a fortune now.
And Jeremy, I never understood, because I only started collecting only a year or two back. Why buy an invisible Dalek if it was invisible? No, you know what I mean.
This is semi-transparent, isn't it? So it's partly see-through and then partly solid.
So yeah. So anyway, we ain't got time to hang around. I'm very serious on being on fad, on trend, and taking my job seriously, because having been in charge of child safeguarding, I also see that the BBC are doing the very same thing with their programs, and of course they want no more problems. So of course we have to have our. We've always got the plane of stones.
Did I miss something in the plane of stones?
I know.
Did something happen in the middle of the night that I didn't see?
I think it looked like a nightclub. It was like a voyeurist. I mean, I think the shooty doctor would have just got on some little elevated stone and just kind of been gyrating and thought he was in some sort of little night spot. I think. Back to his youth. But yes, I mean, it was voyeuristic. I mean, you were not alone at the plane of stones, were you? But
Sounds like a nightclub. Plane of Stones nightclub.
Big finish. I teed you up. What happened at the Plane of Stones? I won't be buying. Look, I mentioned it earlier. I mean, Intimacy Watch. This is all about anything in the past when we look at it now that looks problematic regarding confinement, what's going on in the scene. I mean, we've mentioned Latep. He was stalking Joe. I mean, it was 7 episodes would have been too many for him. He needed a cold bath. The SPiridon heavy breathing, that was unfortunate. It was a bit like one of those dodgy movies or something when all you see is a hand and heavy breathing chasing some young Madeline Smith or something, you know.
The problem, obviously, with this is if you've got something invisible, the only way that you can indicate it is either it throws things about or it breathes heavily. You know, that's what you've got. So they sort of ended up doing that, but yeah, it's a bit over the top breathing.
He's asthmatic, and I'm an asthmatic. I mean, he needs an inhaler, but because he's in danger of being like some sort of peeping Tom, he's just walking around and she can't see him, but he can see her. I think that's a problematic position.
Yeah.
And I'm calling it out as the BBC would. Joe being taken by Wesker, and he's still covered in olive furs. He hasn't declared who he is. He gives her drugs. He spikes her drink, and then he pours that stuff on her. I don't think that's going to be allowed now as a plot device. Just saying, you know. Spiking of drinks, not allowed.
Yeah.
Very
About to be criminalised, even though it's already criminalised.
In all fairness, hot cocoa cures fungal infections.
There you go. And then the other one is, in episode 1, and I know you were enjoying the episodes. I was enjoying the episodes and then going, I think that needs censoring now. The bit in the TARDIS, actually, one of your favourite bits, Jeremy, when John Pertwee's in a coma, and he's even got a bit of polystyrene on him. And
bit of frost.
A bit of frost. Captain Birdseye there. And then all of a sudden, Joe is leaning on his chest to see if he's breathing. And I don't know. As an intimacy coordinator, I think she needs to be a bit closer to his neck because she goes quite low down. I just think there's problems there regarding are those two actors comfortable? And I think we have to be careful of proximity nowadays, don't we, in 2024? And
I mean, just having a pull-out bed that should be a warning.
Hugh, this isn't his first time.
No,
but it was a single bed.
Well,
he's selfish. I mean, he's the diva doctor.
You can't get two people on a single bed. It's difficult.
I want
So
a
I
Murphy
believe.
bed. I want a Murphy bed in the TARDIS room. You'll see all the roundels, and there's going to be a line going around one step of them. Going up, around. What's this for? Push the roundel. Then it comes
Yes,
down.
if I was the doctor, that's exactly what I'd have, a push-out bed and just throw it out. I just love the idea of it.
Yeah, you lot go and find your room somewhere in the TARDIS. I'm here. And,
at that point, a disco ball comes down from the top, and Barry White starts singing. Oh no, we've had that in Rogue anyway, haven't we?
yeah. I can't get that over my head, Kylie Minogue. Yeah, there you go. So, yeah, I mean, I think certain elements of Planet of the Daleks. I think the intimacy coordinator, I think, would be busy. And that moment when Weber's attacked by lots of hooligan SPiridons. It was a shame in the story, actually, that the SPiridons ended up just being, apart from Wesker, a lynch mob. That's not what Doctor Who normally does. They normally do actually try and give us these aliens are doing this. And they did that with 1,000 of Daleks in the original, but the SPiridons suddenly became just a lynch mob, didn't they?
Yeah.
That was just a bit unfortunate. So yeah, that Weber moment, and I think again the intimacy coordinator would have to check, because while all them big furs are on, you can't see what's going on, and you need to check for safety reasons that there's no allegations made years later that Weber doesn't feel as though he missed out on the plane of skulls.
Oh, can you imagine John Barrowman wearing one of those furs? Great practical joke there.
Yes, that's true. Don't go there.
Dangerous territory.
It almost sounds like you're being facetious, but at the same time, no. You could actually see somebody like a particular actor that I haven't mentioned. John could easily just throw a fur around him as a joke. It's just a joke. Yeah, and it's not a joke.
I mean, I'm looking for trouble when there's no trouble. I still don't know why there's an intimacy coordinator on Doctor Who, but there you go. So it's ridiculous.
It's for passionate scenes, isn't it?
Our last criteria, just to kind of get us to it, is obviously, really, in a nutshell, is did it engage you? Did it have it? But now there's two things to this, because people say, well, yes, bye. Well, yes, it might have engaged you, but did it have a satisfactory and a logical resolution to the plot? That we normally have to keep an eye on that one. So, Jeremy?
I think yes to all of that, for me, certainly. It kept me engaged, and it didn't feel boring. It sort of rattled along as a good yarn.
You see, I'm engaged because Terry Nation's allowed to do all those filler bits, which is we could have had a shorter story if not for the fungoids. We could have had a shorter story if it wasn't for the SPiridons. We could have had a shorter story if it wasn't for so-and-so, and that lift shaft and this and that. In the end, you didn't need the Supreme Dalek. You could have had a shorter episode, then you wouldn't have had... You needed the Supreme Dalek just to get the resolution, of course, for that spaceship. It was just... And to me, that helped. Although good old Lartep, 1 minute he's got his eyes and he's got the hots for Joe, but the next minute he's got his eyes for this joystick on the Dalek spaceship, and he knows how to work it. He's a gifted lad, that man. He's multitasking. But I was engaged. I love all the imaginative fillers, the imaginative names, and I thought the resolution was just neat. Was it a neat resolution to the mythical planned 12-episoder that they kind of wanted in the first place? You see, I think it's a kind of a neat trick to do a 12-parter as 2 6-parters, the Frontier in Space and this one. We know Roger Delgado would have had a bigger role in this one if life had turned out differently. The plan was different, wasn't it?
I never considered it as a 12 episode story. I thought obviously Frontier and Planet of the Daleks are 2 separate stories.
Yeah,
with the only
they're so unique that they can be 2 separate.
Yeah, I mean it's only just the linking bit, which is when the Doctor has been shot and injured and goes into the TARDIS, and then the Daleks are just there in the background towards episode 6 on Frontier. But I've always considered them to be separate stories in that respect.
Yeah, and I think the more or less approach is that. So I think you got told don't try and do 12 parts as 12 parts, and I think that it then allows an interesting thing. So the fact that it's the Doctor contacts the Time Lords and then they effectively sent him there to sort that out. It's a different problem, and I think that's quite a neat bit of storytelling, and it allows you to get the situation where Jo does go out of the TARDIS, and that illustrates the whole thing about her being ready to move on. So there's an awful lot going on.
I thought it was interesting, and on the story right in front, that actually it was risky to have in part 1. Quite a lot of the episode was monologue because you didn't have interaction. You had Jo on her own. He's out the equation. There was just a little bit with the thals. Now, remember, the audience apparently is 8-year-olds, was kids. I was 4. If you think of the kids, But I was engaged in all that lot. The fact that, I mean, it was a clever trick to have her talk into a diary sort of thing, so that we could actually know her feelings and know whether she's scared or not and what she's doing. Clever little simple trick. But it would have been problematic, I thought, because it wasn't like a normal Doctor Who story in episode in that respect. And so, you know, Terry Nation, oh, he always does formula. Well, actually, he did something very different in part 1, I thought. Brian, engaged, good resolution?
Oh, yeah, loved it. You know, everything has its faults. But I, you know, just, you know, the classic Who brings back some very, very, as it does with all of us, I'm sure, some very fond memories. And this type of story where it's already been set up in the previous story. So again, we don't know what's going to happen, but we know something big is going on here. God, I love that shot. I love that shot.
Which one's that one?
Yeah, no, I was thrilled from beginning to end. There was actually a plot hole that I noticed yesterday, where Terran and I can't remember who helped them, but they threw they checked the Daleks that they had put into the cold water, or a molten water, ice, whatever, and they said, "Are they dead?" And then he said, "Yes, the shock of the cold must have killed them instantly." Yet later on in the episode, the Doctor says, "Well, we can't kill them, but at least we can entomb them, maybe, and they might have to take them several thousand years to dig them out," I believe is what was said. And I was like, well, why isn't the cold going to kill them all off there? But that's just a minor little.
There's also that element when he when the third Doctor gets so imperious sometimes, and he goes, "No, don't touch that." Remember, it was the invisible Dalek. They have a what was it? An alarm. What was it?
Alarm. Yes.
Yeah, the other one. Yeah, you caught it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And suddenly they don't have an alarm when Rebek gets in it. You know, it's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Well, that's because he said they could open it.
Yes, I know.
You're right. No, they make a rule, and then a few episodes later, they forget that they've done that. And,
unless he disconnected it when he opened the Dalek casing.
Why am I saying they? It's all on Terry. No, it's a great episode. If we're going to do actually, I don't believe I jumped in on the ratings before with the rest of you, but I would give it a 7.
Well, you can't because I'm going to show you, Brian.
Just to do one thing that I really like about the conclusion is them having to run into the TARDIS because the Daleks are chasing them, and then going. That's because it's still threat. It's still ongoing. You haven't wiped them out. You haven't won. So it underlines. It's not one of those ones where we've destroyed the Daleks for X number of years because they've just been chased in. I think that's really nice and dynamic.
It also echoes a lot of 60s Doctor Who when, you'd have molten lava heading towards the TARDIS. They never switch. I don't. This is another thing about New Who, they seem to kind of think, oh, the adventure, dreary, let's get it finished. Now we've got a lovely 8 minutes to do soap opera at the end. And, the Rosa episode, one of the more worthy ones. I don't think it was executed very well. Worthy topic, but then right at the end you have Bill Clinton giving Rosa, and you're thinking, oh, for God's sake, it's a lecture. It's a PowerPoint tutorial. Instead of, as you're saying, Hugh, can we have some adventure to the last second, please? It is Doctor Who after all. Let's not get a bit indulged, So I agree. So Brian, our scores on the doors are very different. Jeremy's out of order. He's on the naughty step. He's yellow card because he knows.
I'm always on the naughty step. It's just me.
If I was the Dalek Supreme, he'd have been exterminated.
Well, I'm going to give it a solid 9. It loses 1 point because of some of the effects, some of the special effects.
I'm going to give you a solid red card. No, right. So I will. So I'll show you how we do this, right?
All right.
Oh my God. That's real, isn't it?
Yes, it is. We judge it as outstanding or it's a good overall story, or it needs some improvement. And we've said a lot of that with the season 1, or it's in special measures. In other words, it really is for the knacker's yard. So regarding this story, I picked this one, and everybody knows in nearly every stream I say, oh, Planet of the Daleks. Of course, I'm going to say, to me, it's true Doctor Who. Pertwee on top of his game. Katy Manning's given a fantastic role in it. Small cast has paid off. You've got the blooming Daleks being pretty ruthless. It's outstanding. And end of. So that's me. Now, I haven't got a picture for Jeremy, so I'll use me, if you don't mind, just for the sake of argument. So how are you going to judge it on my criteria, my game? Hello. No. No. What would you like to say, Jeremy?
Oh, I'll give it a gold Dalek standard. Torchy.
If I had a Dalek gun now.
9 out of 10. No, I'll give it the, what's the top one? Good overall.
No.
I think so. I think you're in Brendan's territory. So I think Torchy is the equivalent of outstanding.
Yeah,
that's it.
Outstanding. Sorry.
I'll go to Hugh. To be fair, so Hugh, I mean,
Yeah,
I do this as if I'm confused and I'm not sure what he's going to say. But go on, Hugh.
So I'm going to give it a good. It's not one of my outstanding issues. I know. I think it's absolutely prime example of what a good Doctor Who story is. I don't think it breaks out enough for me. It's not unusual enough, and the padding's a bit much. To me, that sort of, this is it's just that bit below. It's not one of the ones that I go to watch.
I cannot believe you're judging Plane of Skulls as filler. But, so that leaves Brian. And Brian, to be fair, obviously I haven't got your photograph yet, so you can be me or Hugh. But the point is, is it outstanding, good, needs improvement, or knacker's yard?
It's good overall. Good overall.
Good overall. So that's, oh my God.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
We've got
split decision. There we are.
Well,
if we were talking Inferno, I would be. You don't have a good enough rating for this one.
What is going on with this review? I tell you, I like the idea of Dalek control because it's one way or the highway.
To be fair, Brendan, I think when it's a split decision, you get the casting vote.
Yes,
I've got the Shirley Ballas. I'm Shirley Ballas.
I think the Dalek should have the vote.
Well, this is it. I mean, honestly, Jeremy is coming up with new marking criteria. Brian's saying, well, if we'd reviewed Inferno, well, we didn't. And so I'm going,
no.
As a supreme Dalek, I'm just saying, hold on a minute here.
I'm just doing what the Dalek tells me. I'm under Dalek control.
So
I've observed that judgment for a very select few episodes, and everybody has their own.
Yeah,
you know,
I'm the same. I think it's one of those things, but I think it's absolutely bang on what Doctor Who should be.
Well, there you go. Because I've got the casting vote, and I will exterminate any contrary opinion. It's outstanding, and I will go to the grave on that. Thanks, panel, for joining us. That was a lively one.
Thank you.
Join us again, but I hope you've enjoyed that review. Give us feedback, subscribe, give us a like, and hopefully you enjoyed the experience. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.